Hi, guys. Welcome to Production Tuesday. I hope everything's going well. This is our first class in object-oriented programming. Pretty much everything we've did in CIS 114 and kind of basically just reviewed in CIS 115 has been procedural programming, which means it's just top-down things that we've put inside of main. Sometimes we have declared things globally that we've used, but for the most part, it's just procedural. Do this, then do this, then do this, then do this. We've used functions where all this stuff inside of main will call a function and it comes back, right? None of this stuff has really, under the true definition, been object-oriented programming. None of these are objects. This int price 32, it's not an object. This string name Jim is not an object. Char grade C, that's not an object, right? These are just items that we've dealt with. All right. I may have called things objects at times. I think that's something that everybody does, but the real object-oriented programming starts with classes, and that's what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to blow these out of here. I just had them up there for props. Right? A class is declared outside of main. At first, you're going to think that a class looks a lot like a struct, and you'd be right. One of the things that you'll find is that the first program you write in computer science is usually hello world. Well, when you deal with classes, almost everybody's always taught this using the very first class they've used is the class called book. Because book's got so many things that you can use. It's got a title, it's got an author, it's got a number of pages. It usually has what's it called, ISBN number. It's got all kinds of things that you can put in one of these classes. So for this one, I'm just going to make a class book. Right. Class is going to look a whole lot like a struct, but you're going to find out it's much more powerful than a struct. All right, inside a struct, you can make things public and private. And for this today, I'm not going to give you a definition today of why you use public and private. I just basically want you to learn what a class is. So everything today we put in this is going to be public. Right? Public, you end with a colon, not a semicolon. And then you start putting what is in that. So we're going to put a string. Whoops. String, and we're going to call it title. And let's see, let's put a string and call it author. And an int and use pages. Tighten this up some. All right. This class I've got here, the way I've got it written, and this is important. If this should be the number one note that you take or the number one thing you memorize. Guys, this class here is not an object, okay? You can think of it as a template, a blueprint, specification even, but it's not an object. It helps you make objects, because like I said, it's a blueprint or a template for objects, but it in itself is not an object, right? So think of class, template, class, blueprint, class, specification, but it's not an object. Now, from this, and this is public, which means I can call it straight from main. That's all you need to know about public for now is I can call it straight from main. I can start adding stuff. And if you notice, first thing I have to do is make a book. This is just like a struct, right? Book, we're going to call this book 1. All right, we've declared it. And now I start entering things, and this is going to look a lot like a struct. Book one dot title equals stand. I think that was the first major novel, pop novel. I had to read novels in high school, but I didn't like reading back then. All right, and I hope everybody knows that the author of that is Stephen King. And I think the original book was 1,000 pages, but he released 300 pages later on. So I think the total book was 1,300 pages. All right. All that should look pretty familiar. All right. Like I've said, you'll see the differences as we go on and the power of classes as opposed to structs as we go on. But now I can do the same thing again. I'm going to declare another book. I do this. Okay, I'm going to call this book 2. I think. Sometimes on other IDEs, if you change one of these, they all change to that. So I want this to be book 2. And let's see what other book we have. The Terror. And that's, I think it's Dan Simmons. And let's say 900 pages. I might be off on this. All right. So I can keep doing this as much as possible. These here are objects. I want you, that's the, like I said, the key takeaway of this video is these are objects. I've used this class to create these objects. And this is very, very small for a class. All right. But you see how quick it is to make these. All right. One of the key things about classes is the reusable code. All right. Object-oriented programming, the most important thing about object-oriented programming, which is more of a philosophy than anything else, is the reuse of code. You're going to have a certain, if you reuse code, you've got a certain level of comfort and confidence in the code to reuse it, which means you've probably used it before. You don't reuse code you've never used or don't have confidence in, like I said. So when you reuse code, you're going to have less chance to have errors and things like that. All right. By using a template, by using a class, you're going to reduce the chances of errors. Now, this can be the as we're going to see as we go on. This class is going to grow into functions, and it grows from public. There's also private members. There's a lot we have to learn as far as classes, but I'm trying to keep this self-contained and small for an opening one. As far as like when I see out stuff, it's just the same as it looks like the same as a class. I'm gonna see out uh, 2 dot author I'll cut and paste. Call this one book 1, pages. All right, and I'm going to run it. And I see I outputted Dan Simmons. That's book 2, author, and the pages from book 1, which is The Stand. Okay. So give this code a good look over. Remember the things I told you about object-oriented programming, right? Class is a template or blueprint. It is not objects, but the things that it creates. Book 1, book 2, these are objects. I mean, they're very, 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 you're going to see they're very small objects. And this is programming in the real world is using classes. Because if you were called into an office or from your cubicle asked to write a code, the chances are the person asking you to write code is going to be controlling basically the main or the driver of the program, and he's going to need you to create a class. He's going to tell you what it needs to do, and you're going to give it to him. You don't care what goes on inside this main. It's object oriented. All you care about is your object doing exactly what it wants. So he's going to want to call on your object. It's going to do something for him in the main, in the driver, in the main program. Okay. Take a good look at this. Take notes. The fact that you're all working on another project while we're doing this means I can take time with this and make sure that you all understand this. If you got any questions, please let me know. I'm not going to go into depth right now, letting you know how this is that much different than Strux, but because you're going to see that for yourself as we go through it. But just understand the thing I've said about object-oriented programming, the class itself being a template, and the objects being the output of the template.